This is the Working in Hell podcast with your host, Vinny Blasio. Each episode, Vinny takes you inside the world of New York State corrections, focusing on both corrections officer and law enforcement issues. And now your host, Vinny Blasio.
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Vinny Blasio, and welcome to another episode of the Working in Hell podcast. We try to reach out to you, the audience, and try to give you information, factual information, because most of the media, as you know, does not pick up on the going-ons in the correctional facilities. So if it's sensational headlines, you'll hear that, but the ongoing issues and ongoing struggles, especially for the employees of the New York State Department of Corrections, a lot of that doesn't make it into the media cycle, and we want to make sure that we get that information to you. So with this episode, this is episode 25. This is a challenge and a call out, and the name of this episode is our Governor Hochul's New York State DOCCS policies getting people killed. And the reason we say that, I'm going to start with a challenge and an immediate call out to the governor and ask her. And it just, as we know, it's been a very bad month for DOCCS in regards to the employees and inmates. We've had a rash of inmate deaths. We've had a lot of intoxicating exposures throughout DOCCS facilities that's negatively affecting inmates and DOCCS employees. A lot of unknown substances. We've seen drones where there's a lot. So now we're actually going to call out Governor Hochul and give her a challenge. We had 6 inmate deaths in 7 days. I open up with this challenge and a request to Governor Hochul. Will you, Governor, spend one day working inside these facilities under the same rules and regulations and the policies that you adopted? These policies are, in my opinion, getting people killed. And we would like to ask you to work under those conditions that you helped create. So put on a uniform, and will you, Governor, put the uniform on for just one day? Will you do that? Only then will you understand the conditions of those that you asked to go into these facilities day in and day out. And until that happens, I don't believe this governor has a clue. But it is there. I think it's a fair request. And as I'll start in the monologue, that request goes out every episode until Governor Hochul addresses these issues, which she has yet to address. Prior to the strike, during the strike, and even afterwards, her policies have made a bad situation worse. And this isn't only DOCCS policies any longer, because she is the governor. She has to own these horrible conditions. And we'll get into that in a minute. So let's dive right into it. So recently in the media, you've seen a lot of press, a lot of going on about what's going on inside these correctional facilities. And Fishkill, because that's been the hot topic of the recent exposures, not the only one. We've seen hazmat teams reports of many facilities, and we'll get into specifics. But Fishkill seems to be the hot facility right now. Maybe they have a bad batch of drugs. Maybe they've had a bad batch of a lot of things. But right now, we know that drones flew into Fishkill Correctional Facility that were intercepted. Maybe they've been flying in for a long time and no one's known about it. We just now are finding out about their flight patterns. I don't know. But let's find out. Let's get into the investigation and find out what's going. But the facility, as of today, and this is September 29th, 2025, the facility was never locked down. Yet there's still codes going on. There's still medical emergencies every day. There's still a vast number of resources that are responding to the facility. And as I was listening to the scanner, one of the things hit me is they were call after call after call. There was ambulances lined up. I think it was News 12 in the Hudson Valley that were actually videotaping a show for this particular day. And the ambulances were lined up It almost looked like something that you'd see out of a mass casualty event in a war zone. And as I'm listening to the scanner, I'm hearing calls, and there's this particular call that was coming out for a 70 or 75, I don't remember the exact age, that was coming over the scanner, and there were no resources for this woman. So if all these ambulances and resources are being used by docs and sucking those resources out of the community, is that making the community safe? Is that what Governor Hochul commits to her policies for safety? I just can't wrap my head around it. We say this every week. We say this every episode, but yet instead of things getting better, it seems like they're only getting worse. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating for the workers that are on the inside. It's frustrating for the inmates that are both exposed to secondary exposures from other inmates and those that are using the drugs themselves. And people are saying, well, they chose to do it. So if they OD, so be it. And we do have seen a high number of deaths because we had 6 inmate deaths, and we'll get to those in a second too, in 7 days. And then we see the knee-jerk reaction from the department. The commissioner puts out another one of his famous memos. So if he's not asking you that all these exposures are becoming because you need to shave your beard to get a proper seal on the protective equipment that they don't even give you. Obviously, the beard memo, Commissioner Beard Shaver's memo didn't work. So now he has to offer these other memos. And I'll get into the exact memo a little later in the podcast. But as he does this knee-jerk reaction and to keep sending out these memos, the strange thing is that these policies that he all of a sudden reacts is are policies and suggestions that have come up years ago. This is nothing new. But because of this ego, pride, and the incompetence of this commissioner and now governor, because she has to own his policies, this is what's perpetuating a non-ending cycle of exposures and unsafe working conditions. And as we all know, the strike back in February had nothing to do with money. The governor throws money at it, that's fine, but it never solved the underlying conditions of safety. Not safety. We said this last podcast and many podcasts before. If it's not safe for the inmates, it's not safe for staff, it's not safe for anyone. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that play out every day in the news. We're seeing it play out with the resources being sucked out of the community. And we're seeing that by deaths of inmates now. So are Kathy Hochul's policy killing inmates? I would say yes. Yes, these policies need to be changed. They've been asked to change. And instead of changing, we're getting more of the same. So, and let's get into that. On 9/23, the commissioner did one of his famous for our package room. He's going to invite the, inmate liaison to the table. I guess they're now running policy for docs. So I think that's kind of unique that if the commissioner can't run his facilities, let's just turn over everything to the inmates and let them make policymakers now. And as we've seen, pretty much that's what's been going on with the HALT Act is you letting the inmates run the asylum. And we're getting into the unknown substances, really, because some of these substances now we've seen in the press have been labeled fentanyl. They've been giving names now. We've got a lot of K2. They've been intercepting different information extracted from each of these facilities that these exposures have been going on. So we can't call everything an unknown substance anymore. But as we'll get into some of the information that I got recently, one of my many FOIL requests go unanswered, but I did get one, and it brings in some interesting Narcan numbers from unusual incidents. And we'll get that at the end of the podcast. And also we know that with that package room memo that the commissioner put out that was 2 years in the making. Really, these recommendations have only been coming from the employees and the employees unions for 2 years now. Now all of a sudden you have a stroke of genius and are going to implement policies and take credit for something that the employees have been begging for years. And this has been in writing. This is nothing new, but like everything else this commissioner does, it's half-assed and look at me. So let's get into some of the recent events. We have recommendations from the HALT committee. So one of the things that DOCCS did with the strike was come up with a committee from all the unions, and I guess some advocacy groups were mentioned in a couple of the media outlets I don't know if they were active participants the whole time, but obviously the inmate advocacy groups, which seem to have a stronger union than the actual officers and employees, are winning. They are against these HALT Act recommendations. The HALT Act recommendations, I think, are a good start. I think it's well versed in common sense. I believe that it's also would be prudent on the New York State legislator to, instead of getting people killed and hurt, that they listen to some of these recommendations and enact it. My take on the HALT Act, it should have never been instituted and codified in law. If they were going to do this, it should have been tried first, see what works and see what doesn't, instead of having this thing in law. And now you have to kind of piecemeal to take what you can in and what you can't take out. And as I've stated for the last 2 years, once something is in law, it's very, very difficult to take it out. So we have the good start by the HALT committee. I'll agree with a lot of those recommendations. Do I believe that it needs to go further? Absolutely. But let's take what you can. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, and I would take those recommendations as a good start. But here is something that I just want from one of the facilities, and here was an exact quote that I got from one of the employees, and it kind of sends the alarm of what the employees are feeling. And I'm going to read it to you word for word. Here is the quote that I got from an affected facility. Quote, "Today was one of the scariest days I had. I was just seeing bodies drop like nothing. I don't know if I can go back." Wow. Does that not say something in itself right there? Now, that's an employee. I don't know if I'm going to go back. I see bodies dropping like nothing. And yet, what changed? Nothing. Nothing has changed. As a matter of fact, as I say almost every podcast, I can't believe my lying eyes, because when you think it can't get worse, it actually does get worse. So nothing that DOCCS is doing, nothing the governor is doing is working. The governor has to own for this buffoon of a commissioner that keeps putting out these policies and making a bad situation worse. I'm not going to keep beating on that. But as I said many a times, he got a vote of no confidence for a reason. They didn't have confidence before the strike, certainly didn't during the strike. And it's hell bent now that they definitely do not after the fact, because everything is worse. So, but that comment says everything. Today was one of the scariest days I had. I was just seeing bodies drop like nothing. I don't know if I can go back. That is a very powerful statement. And as you can see from the media events, if it's sensationalized, it'll make a media headline. If you hear of an inmate death or an officer gets stabbed or something, it may make the news for a cycle, But now, because of the cycle has almost died out, because now it's like these exposures are just too common. They're happening 6, 7, 8, 10 times a day. I look at the scanner feed now, and I cannot believe the facilities all across the state. And we're going to break that down in 30 seconds here. Of just what's going on across the state and how many times we're tying up resources and how many people, inmates and facility staff, are affected by these exposures. And I just don't know why, the media has its own narrative, has its own agenda. That's why we do these podcasts, to get the information out. I don't know what more can do to change, because it seems like the more that the people are yelling and complaining, the more it stays the same. Maybe that's the stubbornness of this governor. If it has to do with corrections, it doesn't matter. And she's so dug in. And we'll get to a couple of things that were sent to the governor's office at the end of this podcast. But let's break down some of this, will we? Let's look at the different events that are going on throughout the correctional facilities, the 42 correctional facilities of New York State. I don't know if this is something that I would be proud of as commissioner or governor, but this is the creation and havoc that they've made. So we'll go back to September 7th, and this goes into last night. There was a couple more this morning, I believe, at Cayuga, where we've had some more Narcan uses in a couple facilities. But let's go to from 9/27 to 9/28. Thereabouts. So starting on September 7th, we had an Eastern death of an inmate. That was an alleged overdose by Narcan. On 9/7, we had a Greenhaven alleged overdose by Narcan. On 9/8, We had a Greenhaven alleged overdose by Narcan was used. When I say Narcan, that means Narcan was used. Not all of these were successful in saving the individuals. On September 10th, Attica had an alleged overdose use of Narcan on 9/12. That we've had Greenhaven had an alleged overdose of Narcan. And those ones that I'm speaking of there, the Eastern, the Greenhaven, 3 inmates at Greenhaven and the Attica, those did result in the inmate deaths. That's part of the inmate deaths that I'm talking about, the 6 deaths in 7 days. And at some point, you would think that the inmates would get together and sue because obviously the employees don't have enough advocacy for them and getting any type of suit or protection for them, that the inmates, why aren't they suing the governor and saying that, hey, our environment is not safe either? I mean, there's 6 deaths in 7 days. So you had Eastern 9/7 a death, 9/7 Greenhaven a death, 9/8 Greenhaven death, 9/10 Attica death, 9/12 Greenhaven death. All those involved alleged overdoses and use of Narcan. And as reported in the Western New York area, the news channel, they gave a little more of a death that happened at Collins Correctional. The death it started at Collins, ended up at a local hospital, according to the news report. And they gave a little better description at approximately 9 a.m. on September 13, 2025, at Collins Correctional Facility. A 27-year-old inmate was found unresponsive in their recreational pen floor. Security and medical staff immediately responded and began life-saving measures, including CPR, Narcan, and a bag valve mask. Inmate remained unresponsive, and staff called for an ambulance. EMTs arrived shortly after, took over care, and reported that the inmate had a pulse. He was transported by ambulance and admitted to an outside hospital's intensive care unit. Inmate remained in the ICU, but was pronounced dead at 12:48 p.m. on September 15th. The inmate was serving a sentence of 16 years plus 5 years post-release supervision after being convicted of 5 counts of assault in the first degree and 1 count of assault in the second degree. These crimes were committed in Bronx County, and they were received into DOCCS custody on August 5th, 2022. So there it is. In just 7 days, there were 6 deaths. Then let's examine a little more closely that all the calls into the facilities, there's too many to count, but doing a 14-day look back or thereabouts the last 2 weeks, we'll start in alphabetical order at the Albion Correctional Facility. We had a call for EMS at September 16th and September 26th. This looks like it was for the inmates. And Attica, there was 2 calls that seemed to be inmates, and that was September 25th and September 26th. Bear Hill Correctional Facility, there was a call on 9/17. Doesn't specify if that call was for inmate or employee. Bedford Hills, there was many, 9/16, 9/17, 9/19, 9/23, and 9/26. There was 3 incidents using Narcan, believed to be all inmates in that incident. 9/27, unresponsive inmates. That's 8 instances alone at Bedford Hills. And you'll see a pattern as you look at these calls that, everything is unresponsive, a lot of seizures. So that's telling me that it's usually, from the same type of substance that's causing all these exposures, because it's having the same effect on staff and inmates. Cayuga, there was an incident on 9/26, Clinton Correctional Facility, 9/13, 9/16, 9/17. Collins Correctional Facility, 9/13, 9/15, 9/18, and September 26th. Coxsackie Correctional Facility, 9/13, alleged overdose. 9/16, there were 3 EMS incidents calls. 9/17, 2 incidents. 9/19, 9/21, 9/22, there was an attempted hanging. There was 2 total incidents. Now, not every one of these incidents, for clarification, is for exposures I will say it is life-threatening, but there's just EMS total. But a lot of these are exposure and overdose related, but not every instance that I'm reading off here is exactly that. Eastern Correctional Facility, 916, 2 incidents. 918, 919, there was 3, including at least 1 overdose. 921, suspected overdose. 923, there were 2 calls. 924, at least 2 overdoses, unclear in the dispatch records. Another incidents on 926 and 927. So a lot. This is giving you the EMS calls. That's a lot. And then Fishkill Correctional Facility, which I started off the podcast with. We could have a whole show on Fishkill Correctional Facility alone, but we'll just start with the 2-week look backs. 924, intoxicated inmate. 915, 6 officers exposed. Then later that day, there were 2 more staff exposed. Then 1 more after that. 916, suspected overdose. Employee exposures to 5 calls on the dispatch. That means 5 calls were for employee exposures alone. 917, there was a call. 918, there was a hanging and a possible overdose, intoxicated inmate. There was 3 events for that. 922 was an incident. 923, employee exposure, another incident with either exposure of an overdose of an inmate. Inmate OD with Narcan. I mean, it's the same over and over again. 924, 2 incidents. 925, 2 employees exposures. Call for EMS, another officer exposure. So they got multiple calls on the same day, and it's almost daily, as you can see. And just a portion of these calls are reported. And problem there was, like I said at the beginning, there were ambulances lined up. So a lot of this didn't even make dispatch. They were lined up and gone, and that doesn't take into account those that went out by state van or in personal vehicles, because that happened too. So there's a lot that goes unreported in addition to what I'm just reading out. And I had to go through these calls because I couldn't believe the volume and number of calls and the symptoms that were all related that I'm actually reading off. I was in shock because I didn't expect this myself. And, and drones we're seeing at the Fishkill Correctional Facility, 1 intercepted. Hazmat also reported to the Fishkill Correctional Facility. 5 points. We had an EMS call 916. 919, there was an alleged overdose with the use of Narcan. EMS calls on 923, 924, 926. There were 2 such EMS calls. Now we'll go to Franklin Correctional Facility, 921. 922, inmate seizure. There it is again, seizure. That seems to be happening a lot in a lot of these dispatch calls. Not going to say that every single one is exposure related, but I would venture to say, in my opinion, that more so than not have to do with exposures or their diabetic seizures and other possibilities. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're talking about inmates that are there for a long time. But a lot of these can be prevented because of drug overdoses if the drugs weren't there. And we'll get into some of the stopping of contraband getting into the prisons in a little bit. So Greenhaven, 923, had an attempted hanging, another EMS call in 926. Green Correctional Facility, EMS call 917, 923 for an unresponsive inmate. Again, there's that word, unresponsive inmate. 924, employee exposure, hazmat teams respond. This was reported in the media. 925, inmate overdose with the use of Narcan. And then that hazmat incident that was at Green, they did a test and it was reported that substance tested positive for titanium dioxide, which I know it's a common substance, but I don't know what the ins and outs of that. So I won't say too much on the titanium dioxide, but it was good to see that at least they tested something and found out what it was. Groveland, they had an EMS call on 915, and they also had another one with 2 incidences on 922 the same day. Elk Creek had an EMS call on 925. Mercy Correctional Facility had an EMS call 916. Mid-State Correctional had an EMS call 919. Mohawk had another one on 919. And this is just a 2-week look back. Orleans Correctional Facility, September 28th, unknown drugs. Otisville Correctional Facility, 923, hazmat response. That also made the news, and we'll talk about that in a second. Shawangunk Correctional Facility, 916 for an officer exposure. 919 EMS call, 925 inmate unresponsive. 926, another call. Sing Sing to 2 EMS calls, 915 and 920. Taconic Correctional, they had EMS calls on 915, 916, and 918. Ulster Correctional Facility had EMS call on 915 and 922 with seizures. Again, there's that word seizures again. Upstate Correctional Facility, we had an EMS call on 915, overdose with pills, 926, lightheaded and dizzy, common effect that you're seeing, elevated blood pressure in a lot of these EMS calls, lightheaded, dizzy. Almost every call has the same description. Doesn't say if that was inmate or staff on the 926 call, but I just wanted to make sure that lightheaded and dizzy it gets out there, because that's another, the seizures and lightheaded and dizziness is in almost all of these EMS calls. Wallkill Correctional Facilities, 917, another one was 925, unresponsive. Again, that's common. Again, we keep using the key words here. Washington Correctional Facility, EMS call on 926, suspected overdose. Woodburn, we had calls on 914, 918, 921, suspected hanging. Another EMS call on 926. Wyoming Correctional Facility, EMS call 921. And I got all this, and it's and I'll put out a disclaimer because this is reported by Crime Radar. So a lot of these dispatch come out from a teletype, so it's talk to text. So not everything that you get in that is 100% accurate, because the teletype contains mistakes as it tries to convert speech into text. And not every incident, as we know, is 100% accurate when it first comes out. As in every emergency, the facts change. But it doesn't stop the fact that dispatch was called for all these events that I just read off. And that's just a 2-week period, folks. That's just 2 weeks. What is going on? 2-week period. I just can't wrap my head around this. And as the site where 6 inmates and 13 staff members became ill, that was a Fishkill Correctional Facility on 926 alone. We have asked docs for reports, of these incidents, and our reports and our FOIA requests often go unanswered. So we can't get fresh and accurate data and fresh reports out because doc stonewalls and doesn't give us the information. And I have over 87% of my FOIA requests are unanswered at this time. We have one that's going on next month. Is it next month? Or it's going on almost 11 months old, and we still do not have the information. So, and then we have to appeal. We just want to appeal one to Governor Hochul's office because she wasn't releasing certain information that I believed we were entitled to full information. They only released partial. And I believe because it sets policy for docs, and as you can see, it's every weekend the commissioner puts out a new memo, a new policy, and it's directly related to the information I request. And it's just anything they can to stonewall you and not get the truthful, accurate information out there. It's actually disgusting. But all that I read in that couple minutes, that was all the requests throughout the state for 2 weeks. That's just a 2-week period. Fishkill alone, I mean, they're still getting calls. They're not using ambulances much the last couple of days, but they're still getting calls every day for medical responses. It's absolutely crazy. And as we've seen, the Albany Times Union reports that illicit cannabinoids are added to liquid cartridges used in vaping devices. They claim that investigators have found that synthetic cannabinoids and substances at a site where 6 inmates and 13 staff members became ill inside the Fishkill Correctional Facility last week. And that article was dated 9/26/2025. So just a few days ago. So, where is all this coming from? And where's the lookout for safety? If all this was implemented 2 years ago, when the problems started, and we'll get to that in a minute with the uses of Narcan, this could have been avoided. This would not be going an uphill battle. We would have been seeing a downside, or if not eliminated. You're never going to stop contraband 100%. I don't care what anybody says. You're always going to have a certain amount come in, or, the majority of it comes in through packages and outside sources. A lot of it comes in through the visit room. And yes, unfortunately, some do come in through dirty employees. We don't do the hiring, so that's a DOCCS problem. But the majority of it does not come in through DOCCS employees, whether that's security staff, civilian, National Guard, what have you. But you're always going to have bad actors, and nobody wants to work with a bad actor, and especially putting themselves and others into a medical and safety concerns. It's absolutely crazy. But all this would have been on the downside had DOCCS listened to its own officers and nurses and saying, hey, we have a problem, but here's how we can, not 2 years later, put out a knee-jerk memo because your back is against the wall, and now we have to decide to do something disgusting. And it relates to this, and then this next here, Mid-Hudson News, dated September 24, 2025, reports prisons are to tighten security measures. This comes on the incident at Otisville Correctional Facility, where inmates became disruptive in their housing unit and prompted a use of force, during which the inmate bit staff. The inmate was alleged to be intoxicated and in such causing secondary exposure to 3 officers and 1 National Guard member. Local hazmat team responded and searched and cleared the area. So what is all the byproduct of this? You see that other staff are getting secondary exposures. National Guard are also feeling the effect. So this is real, folks. If it's happening to inmates, happening to civilian staff, happening to security staff, and everybody is having the same problems with elevated blood pressure, dizziness, lightheadedness, seizures, what have you, there's a problem. You can't say this is stress-induced psychosis. You can't say that it's not a problem, because it's not limited to just one person or one facility. It is statewide, and it's everybody is getting these effects. So what do you have to do to get change? I mean, obviously the 6 inmate deaths, nothing's changed. So where do we go from here, Governor Hochul? Your policies are atrocious and nothing is changing. So again, the good word for him, the prison czar. I think people have a couple other names that I won't mention on the air for the prison czar, but it states itself right there. Tighten security measures. Well, it's still happening. Commissioner did author another one of his memos, which detailed some security changes. It's funny how these changes were given to him 2 years ago. I keep saying that, and never implemented. But now, because of the deaths and publicity, he must enact as his back is against a wall. And we know that's 100% true. So let's call, as the commissioner says, some balls and strikes. He should be fired. I mean, when you have this type of safety risk and nothing changes, what do? You have to change the person at the top. I mean, he has indirectly caused this, and by his incompetence and his extension of the executive, so the governor owns this debacle. The governor is to blame, and let's not forget, he did add the ILC to the memo, so I guess they are now in a higher ranking policy-making position. Let's not listen into the frontline staff, Governor Hochul. So this is on you. We have come to expect this from the leadership of DOCCS. We know that they cannot solve a problem, that they only add to it, whether it's the 70 is the new 100% memo, whether it's telling people that, if you go to PESH, now we're going to make you shave, these new jerk reactions to punish staff. We've come to expect this of DOC leadership. That's not going to change. And Governor Hochul has said that she, fully endorses. He's fairly new, even though he's got more time than most on the job. It's kind of hilarious. And he did every position, including hiring some of the people that he belittles and begrudges. So the governor has to own this. And, people have been trying to go over the commissioner. I call him Commissioner Beard Shaver because that was his last memo. But people have been trying to go over the commissioner's head and get directly to the governor to no avail. I've gotten memos and emails from legislative people that said that we've tried to contact the governor and we can't get through to her. And I have that. So I'm not making that up. I have proof. So she has to own these policies, and they're hers. And it is literally getting people killed. Literally. I don't mean that figuratively. It's literally getting people killed now. It seems like every day there's a new article about some chronic systemic problem with drugs, overdoses, deaths, and employees' exposures. And yet it still continues and it keeps getting worse. And why not? To this day, the Fishkill Correctional Facility is not locked down. Why? Does safety not matter to these people? So even today, it's not locked down. I can't wrap my head around that either. So let's just keep getting more people exposed. Let's keep rewarding bad behavior. And it just goes on and on. And while we're talking about these exposures, yet we know what's happening to the inmates, we know what's happening to the officers, but what are the long-term effects? Is it going to cause cancer? Is it going to have long-term effects on the heart, lungs, brain? What is the long-term effects of getting this secondhand stuff in? The last I knew, New York was a non-smoking facility, and there shouldn't be, or New York State was non-smoking indoors, but yet we're allowing this stuff to be smoked. We know that they're taking batteries. We'll get to that in a minute too, out of the tablets, and they're smoking lithium batteries. But then do we take them away from the tablets and say you don't get another one now? No, we reward them by giving another tablet. So let's give you the stuff to smoke. It makes absolutely no sense. It's backwards. It's backwards, backwards, backwards. I don't even know what to say anymore because we keep saying the same thing and nothing changes. I guess that's the definition of insanity. Keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And that's what we have. That's what we have with this governor. That's what we have with this DOCCS leadership team. Let's just keep doing the same thing. Let's put our head in the sand and pretend like there's not a problem. But guess what? There is a problem. And when someone dies and when employees go home with long-term illnesses or death, then that's on you. Like I said, we got 6 inmates in the last 7 days. That's on you, Governor. That's on you, Commissioner. So again, I don't know where you go from here, but every day there's a new article that comes up, that comes out. And we're talking about the what's happening post strike. The staffing conditions are even worse than they were prior to the strike. Just yesterday, I think it was yesterday or the day before, I got a message. We had because of short staffing. There was a female officer that was in an unprovoked attack. The inmate just comes up and punches her in the face. Were they high? I don't know what the reasons were, but and because of the way the halt structure is, a lot of these inmates are just blasting officers in the face because that's their way of getting protective custody, whether they own gambling debts or what have you. And we touched on that in another podcast, so I'm not going to get too deep into that today. But it's like, it's getting crazy, and it's not getting better. And I don't know where we go from here. And as long as the commissioner is in charge and doing the same things, not listening to staff or putting out memos that you're listening to staff, but listening to them 2 years too late, does that really do justice? So I'm hoping that there's somebody out there, whether that's the federal government, something that's going to come in and actually help people. Koch has been doing it. I know the commissioner put out that he was upset, or you could tell it from the tone of the memo. It didn't put that word for word, but because you went to PESH, you must now shave because they're saying you can't get a seal. Well, you never supplied us with the mask to begin with, so I call bullshit on that. But everything he does is penalize the employee, not look at himself and do a self-awareness or a self-examination. What can I do to make things better? It doesn't work that way with this leadership team. And it should. Unfortunately, we should all humble ourselves and say, what can we do to make things safer? Safer for the inmates, safer for the officers, safer for the civilian staff, and then everything will take care of itself. If everyone's safe, the facilities run better. And after I remember sitting at a meeting with Commissioner Annucci years ago, and that was his exact words. As the assaults were starting to climb, or where they were, halt was the last conversation that I had with him. Halt was not implemented, but take his words that when everything runs safe, programming runs safe, the institutions run better. Yeah, you would think that's common sense, but that common sense seems to be going out the window since Commissioner Annucci has left, because nothing is safe anymore. It's not safe for anyone. Safe for visitors. We just had a visitor fall out yesterday. I believe I listened to that on the scanner again, if that's to be believed, but that's what came over the public dispatch. So it's not safe for visitors, not safe for inmates. Again, I keep going over and over. So let's get on to some of the things. We keep talking about the balls and strikes, which I think is hilarious, but that's what Commissioner talked about in one of his TV interviews. He said that he wanted to go it. So let me see. Do we have that here? So let's put up a poll, because I did 3 polls, which I've kind of gotten away from lately. But now that we're back into the swing of things with these podcasts, we have 3 polls to go through. One about Governor Hochul, one about the tablets, and one about DOCCS. and here is one here. Let's see. This is, as shown in yesterday's podcast, the commissioners says that he is transparent and calls balls and strikes. What say you? And for a refresher, I posted the video of the commissioner saying this when he was being interviewed. I can't remember the station, but it was in the last podcast. The commissioner sat down and he said, I want to be transparent and call balls and strikes. So I asked, as shown in yesterday's podcast, the commissioner says he is transparent and calls balls and strikes. What say you? So what do the employees say about it? So we did a quick couple day poll, and 3 votes said yes, DOCCS. They call it like they see it. So whether those were intentional or joking around, or 3 people hit the yes button by accident, I'm not sure. But 3 people in all of the 658 people that participated in the poll, 3 votes said yes, DOCCS calls it like they see it. And then the rest, 652 votes, or 99.8%, said no. They allow only what they want people to see. So again, 3 votes for yes, for balls and strikes, and most of the people, 99.8, 652 people disagreed with the commissioner and said no, they only allow. So we'll move on to the next one, which this poll had to do with Governor Hochul. And this was taken earlier, and I let this stay up for a little while. I think this was up, I can't remember how long it was up, but this poll was for, do you support Governor Hochul and will you support her in 2026? And then the 2 choices for the poll were yes, she is a leader and has my support. That garnered a total of 9 votes. And the other poll option was no, she doesn't have what it takes to lead New York. And 99% agreed with a no. 972 votes said no, she doesn't have what it takes to lead New York. So no confidence in the governor, no confidence in the commissioner. Let's go on to the last poll. And this has to do with a lot of things with the tablets. And for those that are not correction related and are like, what is a tablet? It's like an iPad that the inmates have that they can do games on, they can send emails, they can video chat, they can send pictures, what have you. And the inmates have access to these tablets. And these tablets, as you know, just like an iPad, runs on lithium batteries, and sometimes they smoke them. But this poll had to do with, do you believe there is a correlation between the increase in drugs in prison and the inmates' access to tablets? So this wasn't just has to do with smoking the batteries or breaking the tablets to use them. It was the overall goal. Do you believe that there is a correlation between the increase in drugs in the prisons and the inmates' access to tablets? And the 2 choices were yes, the tablets are linked to higher drugs and overdoses, which got 213 votes, 92%. And the other poll option was no, there is no link between the 2, as you see on the screen that got 18 votes, or 7% of it. So most people agree that the tablets are also leading to the increase in drugs. And obviously, you have more of a direct link and unmonitored access to the family and to other people. And people do not believe, from a lot of the comments that I got, that the tablets are being monitored like phone calls would be. So that's where we're at with that, folks. And then we'll close out with the Narcan. I want to hit that. And then, but while we're on the subject of the governor and the problem, let me just add this to the stage. And this is my letter to Office of Employee Relations. As the LAD podcast in episode 24, we heard about a clause that was added, basically creating this blackball list, and people couldn't go to work for New York State. So it prompted me, obviously I'm in Florida for the majority of the time, and I'm not looking to, so to speak, work for New York State, but I want, what if I wanted to? Am I on this list? And that's what this letter here, this was dated September 7th, no surprise. I sent this email, did get a generic response back from the Office of Employee Relations. And and I'll read it for those that are listening. To the Office of OER, I sent an email on September 7th, 2025 that was acknowledged as being sent by your office. Since this inquiry, I have not received an answer to my request. I have provided my request below. And to this date, as of September 29th, the date of this podcast is being produced, I still have not received an answer. I did appeal to the director, Mike Valforte, to his email. This was also sent in both email and USPS. And again, still no reply. Shocking. New York is not very good in supplying information nor responding. But let me get into it again. I sent the email on September 27th that was acknowledged by your office. And then here is my request below. Recently, New York has added verbiage to the recent contract, see below. There is also the governor's office, governor's executive orders 47 and revisions from 47.1 to 47.9 as of this writing. Now, there was an extension of the National Guard, so we're at 47.10 for executive orders, but we'll go on. The executive orders seem to deal with those employed and separating from service from issues surrounding the strike, not previous employees. It lists your office as being the gatekeeper of this directive. I'm requesting, if any list exists concerning those individuals that your office would deem to be in the criteria mentioned in those executive orders above, and below verbiage to recent contracts. If such a list exists, how would I get a copy of this list? I would also like to inquire if I'm considered meeting this criterion as a participant. Am I on this list of individuals considered by your office of the New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision or any other agency? I'd like to know if I am barred in any way from working in a New York State government position or agency. And please see for reference, now this is giving the contractor language. Contractors shall not subcontract any portion of this work to any individual who was previously employed by the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision and participated, caused, instigated, encouraged, or condoned the 2025 illegal and unlawful correction strike. I thank you for your time and attention to this matter. So we'll see if we get a response to that. So I know that there's been a lot in the media, a lot of people were saying, where is this list? Who has this list? So now we know that, they denied that such a list exists, but now we know that people are being prohibited. We talked about that last podcast. Am I not entitled to know if I'm on this list? Am I not entitled to know if I'm barred from employment? But according to New York, I guess the information is to them alone. So we'll get into the Narcan. So getting to the package room. So Commissioner Marticello, so we'll back up a little bit. When I talked about the package room, the memo. So here's his memo dated September 23rd, package room, unknown substance safety. And, that's addressed to all package room staff. And he sounds like really like he's accomplishing a lot here. More like Nero playing the violin while Rome is burning is how I would like to put it. But over the past few years, I have taken aggressive steps in an attempt to interdict dangerous contraband drugs from coming into our correctional facility, which have resulted in overdose deaths, anxiety, and violent behaviors against staff and or other incarcerated individuals within our facility, as well as other health implications. Well, part of that I would agree with. It has caused deaths and overdoses and anxiety and violent behaviors and people suffering from exposures. You left out, workers' comp injuries and long-term health risks and effects. But over the past few years, save it, buddy. I am unapologetic in my aggressive approach. Really? Unapologetic? It took you 2 years to author such an memo and you're an aggressive? In 2 years to write a memo that should have been done 2 years ago was aggressive? I hate to see that. Holy cow. I am unapologetic in my aggressive approach to drug interdiction to ensure the health, safety, and well-being of every employee, incarcerated individual, and visitor. As a result, we will continue to explore additional ways to augment the various measures that we have launched to combat the crisis, including implementation of the following steps immediately with updates to Directive 4911, packages and articles sent to facilities forthcoming. Real. Wow, that not a mouthful there? Oh, man. He's right about that. The only thing that he's not right about is the ensuring the health, safety, and well-being of every employee, incarcerated individual, and visitor, because as we know, just yesterday, somebody fell out in the lobby during a visit. So I would venture to say, and we've seen from the exposures and the 6 deaths, that he's not doing such a good job. Effective immediately, all printed material as specified in Directive 4911 will be held in the package room for 6 days. So the Office of Special Investigations, OSI K9, to screen materials for illicit substances. Okay. Are the doc's job, are the K9 trained in every substance? Are they even trained? Are they trained for fentanyl? Why would you expose a dog to fentanyl? I don't, but I do like the holding for 6 days, but then what? And how do you test for every substance? Effective immediately, all tobacco products as specified in Directive 4911 will be held in the package room for up to 6 days for an OSI K9 to screen products for illicit substances. Okay, another good thing. But how do you test for all of it? How do you know if it's sprayed with everything? But two things, but this was asked for 2 years ago. CIU has been telling them for a long time that tobacco is being sprayed with substances and how they were doing it. I'm not going to get into that over the air to tell people how to do it or what to do and what not to do. But this has all been done. This has all been talked about. Why 2 years? We will poll all crisis intervention unit team leaders. Oh, really? Well, you didn't do that for the last 2 years to identify trends and intelligence gleaned at facilities to inform future decisions. Are we going to cross-reference now CIU and OSI? I thought they were working against each other, not with each other. We will form a work group comprised of experienced package room or correction officers to select additional drug interdiction strategy and best practices. Again, nothing wrong with that. I'm for it. I'm for all these actually, but 2 years ago, the package room officers gave you a list of what would work and still nothing. We will engage with various incarcerated liaison committees to solicit ideas and additional drug interdiction measures, and will safeguard our institutions. Well, last I know, I didn't know we were giving ILC policy-making decisions, though I find no fault in giving them and soliciting ideas and soliciting their opinions, but to include them in a policy-making, I got a little issue with that. But I digress. If that's going to help anything, then anything is better than nothing. As I always say, a bad plan is better than no plan, but why 2 years? We will pilot additional technology in a number of facilities that will aid in identifying illicit drugs and foreign substances, something that's been done. I know I've talked to one vendor, prior to all these recent exposures, going back to the last, they were trying to get their technology introduced to DOCCS. So I don't know where the problem lies. But again, this was given to them. Why so long? Why 2 years? We will work with relevant district attorneys to prosecute individuals found in possession of illicit drugs and substances. Well, this subject is at least 12 years old because I know that this was talked about. It's in statewide labor management meeting minutes, and to work with the district attorneys to make sure that there was prosecution of inmates that were doing bad behavior, or anyone for that matter. So, again, why did that take so long? This has been asked for so long. I just can't wrap my head around it. As the commissioner, is my responsibility. Well, it is your responsibility. It's time that you step up and take some responsibility to make sure that all reasonable steps to protect health, safety, and staff, incarcerated people, and visitors. I mean, that should be used right there as a lawsuit by both the correction officers and the inmates to use against the corrections agency, because they have not lived up to either one. And still, as of this podcast, they've done nothing. They didn't lock down a facility. If somebody died there, they should have to own that. And this memo is going to read it line up, blah, blah, blah. So I just wanted to make sure that because I left that out. And that brings us to the last part of the podcast with these numbers. Now, DOCCS supplied these numbers. I'm not saying that they're accurate, not saying that they're inaccurate, but this is from a FOIL request that I did not get everything that I asked for, but I did get these numbers. So this is not a new problem. So I don't know how the governor sits there and lets the leadership of DOCCS tell her that they're doing a stroke of genius by these memos and doing everything when these numbers tell a whole story. And let's look at these numbers. I mean, when you look at this, and like I said, in this, let me read DOCCS disclaimers. Nobody takes the numbers and gets out of here. But this is the New York Department of Corrections and Community Supervision, number of unusual incidents involving Narcan use. And they want to make sure that they specify a note at the bottom, on the bottom of page 2. So we'll put that disclaimer out there so everybody can see it before we get into the numbers. The number of incidents involving Narcan use cannot be used as a proxy for the number of overdose incident or number of times Narcan is administered. Narcan may be used in other situations aside from overdoses and may be used multiple times within an incident. Well, I don't know where else you're going to be using Narcan other than an incident where somebody is having an overdose incident. So I'm not a doctor, so I'll leave that alone. But that's the disclaimer that DOCCS has got. But even so, and I get that Narcan may have been used more than one time and more than one incident. As we've seen, the one it made it 4 times, it took the one nurse 4 times, and she still wasn't having to effects, and they used other methods, and I'm not going to get out to her personal information. But you can use it as a baseline. So let's not pretend that these numbers with this disclaimer are saying anything other than that, because as you can see, the total number of incidents, when we compare whether it be month to month, year to year, tells a story. All right, you know, you're going to get the average use of Narcan. If all of a sudden that increases or decreases by a significant number or stays the same, that's telling the story. So as we look at 2021, you know, we had incidents with Narcan. You see the numbers are jetting around from, you know, a high of, I think, 59 to a low of 34, 35 for the year of 2021. But you had a total for 2021 of 529 incidents. It's right there on the screen for those that are watching the video. For those, I'll keep reading it for those that are in audio mode only. 2022, there was a slight decrease of 475, but as you can see, the lowest total for 2022 on a monthly basis was 36, I believe, and a high number of uses of 53. But the total number for 2022, so it still gives you a baseline, you know, 529 and 21, 475 and 20 and 22. So now we jump up to 23. And we see a total number of uses of 717. So see how it skyrockets there. And we go from a low month, the lowest number is 41. And then we go to a high, which it beats the previous highs of the previous 2 years of 83. So, but 717. So whether can't say that all that was used on one person to make it so high. So it still gives you a baseline. So 2023, you saw that there was a problem. And what did you do? So as I said, we've been talking about how people have been coming to this agency and giving them 2 years worth of ideas saying that there's a problem, but the numbers aren't going down. And now we go to 2024, again, a high of 83 in the month of January of 2024, first one on your screen. And then we go to a low. What was the lowest number? I think it was 46 in September. Yeah, 46 in September of 24. But the same number, basically the same number as 2023. So you had 715 uses of Narcan. To me, that's a lot. That's a lot. So you've increased from 21 to 24. And now 25, we only have, as you can see on your screen there, we only have 1 month of totals for 25, but I'd like to see 25's number. You know, if you take Fishkill alone within the last month, you probably have 700 incidents. I'm being facetious, but you probably have a high number of incidents there alone. I mean, if you were to take that 76 number and use that as the average spread over 12 months, you're going to beat the 715. You had 76 alone in January of 2025. And what's probably going to bring 25 down, which is also another statistic, is the number during the strike. The number of overdoses actually went down. Why is that? Think about that. So during the strike, the inmates' numbers would be much lower. So I don't have that information. I'm giving you my opinion because DOCCS hasn't given it to me. Why they don't give me the information, I can't answer that. But the information that they did have, I'm sharing with you today. So the memo the commissioner puts out, I'm in agreement with most of it, as far as the package room ideas. But here we are, and we see that the incidences were spiking over the 2 years. What took you so long? You've had this information. You just gave it to me last week, but you've had this information for years. And again, DOCCS, everything that does, and I don't think I'll get any argument from there because, whether they'd be in a management position, an officer, or a civilian, everybody always says, what do they say about DOCCS? That DOCCS is reactive, not proactive. So again, Governor, Commissioner, what say you? Where are we? Where are we with this? And again, if you need this information, it'll be on the workinginhell.com website by the time the podcast airs. And as always, you can always reach out to me at vinnyblasio@outlook.com, and I'll share the information with you. This has been shared with other people that have asked for Narcan use in the media, and the certain things that are going on. I have no problem sharing with anyone that needs the information, and hopefully you use that in a positive way and not a negative way. But so that's it, folks. I mean, that's pretty much everything in a nutshell. We wanted to make sure that we got out this podcast because of all the exposures, especially what's going on predominantly in the Mid-Hudson area. Looks like they got a bad batch of goods, and drones are flying around, and Fishkill isn't the only one, mind you. We know that the last podcast we talked of the interception of drones at another correctional facility. And we know that this isn't the first time that Fishkill has had a problem with drones. We also know that it's been a problem outside, and with the closure of posts, that not everything is going to be able to be seen because they close a lot of the outside patrols because they don't have the staff. And again, that's a DOCCS problem. You can't continue to beat up your staff. And how good, talk about recruiting. Does that make it look good when you have all these people going out by ambulances that people are seeing? And I read you the quote, and I'm going to read it again as I close it out because it's so powerful. Is that a good recruiting tool? Let's get these exposures out. Hey, come to work for DOCCS, and you too can leave in an ambulance. Woo! I mean, it's disgusting. So, and I'll also end with the challenge to the governor. Come work at a day at a correctional facility, Governor. Put on that uniform under the shitty conditions that you put everybody under your policies, and you work a day, not with your security team. You put on the uniform and go work and see how you like it and see what changes that you would want. See how you make out, if you even make it out in a day or a shift. But as I want to get back to, today was one of the scariest days I had. I was just seeing bodies drop like nothing. I don't know if I can go back. I mean, to me, folks, that says it all right there. I don't know what else to say. And unfortunately, we can keep talking, but it seems like we're talking in circles, that there's no advocacy for everybody is silent. Where is everything for the employee advocacy that's going on in all these facilities about the exposures? Where is it? I see articles, we just got one, I think it was yesterday, about somebody getting stabbed at Auburn. I think the Central Region put out something a couple of days before that about some incidents that are going on there. But where's the talk? Where is the advocacy? What's so silent about exposures and wanting people to be safe? Where's the talk? Where's the media attention for that? Where's the press releases? Where's the TV interviews? Where is it? Doesn't safety mean anything? And if the media is not picking up, then find a different avenue. Try podcasting. But I digress. We'll leave it there. I just want everybody to be safe. We want to make sure that we get your message out, know that you are being heard. Obviously, that's the reason for this podcast today, to know that your frustration is being dealt with, and give you a way to vent, to let some of the steam off, because I hear everything from strike 2.0 to everything, because people feel so frustrated and so bottled up inside that they need a relief. And I get it. And I didn't realize how bad it was until I started getting these messages. And then I'm like, you know what? Let me just do a 2-week look back and let me see how bad it was. And even I was shocked at how bad it was. And I get your messages every day, so I know, I see what's written. I see what's going on at the actual facilities, not the social media BS. So, when I looked at the dispatch records myself, and I was shocked too. So, but you do have a voice. You're your best advocate, and hopefully more is to come to keep you safe and safer, because obviously you're not safe in the conditions that it's at right now. So with that, I will leave you. And as I do with every podcast, I wish everyone safety, wish everyone a happy home life. I know that they're not the best working conditions for those that are getting stuck every day and mandated, and no vacation time, no PLs. And now I can't wrap my head around it. No seniority. So the seniority has been taken away in many of the jails. That I don't know how you just abide by a secure or one of your things that you're entitled to under contract. But if you let one contract article leave, then you might as well not have a contract at all. And I'm not going to get into the other politics of that, but it looks like changes are coming. But again, always be kind, because you never know what the person next to you is going through. And I wish you well, everyone. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
You've been listening to the Working in Hell podcast with Vinny Blasio. Find this podcast on any of your favorite platforms like Audible, iHeart, and Spotify. And be sure to check out www.workinginhell.com for more information and important links. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.